In this podcast, I'm going to talk about building an effective team, some of the steps I went through from the beginning to where I am today. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is more of the raw, uncut versions. Many of these things I'm still thinking of, I'm trying to piece together. And truly, I'm never going to have all the answers. I don't think anybody will, but I want to share some of the things I'm going through because I think I'm learning a lot. So this video, I'm going to talk about the 10 phases when I put together the notes for today that I went through when starting the To-Do Dudes to where we are today, now 5 years later. So for phase number 1, when we were first starting, it was simply neighborhood kids. I was helping my grandmother with a bunch of her chores around the house, and her neighbors saw, and then they needed help. They needed pressure washing done. They needed their car detailed, furniture moved. And I realized I'm going to need a little bit of help. It was a lot of things around the home that I knew I could do, but I needed like a buddy. So I went to, in our neighborhood, we had just a few kids. It was more of an older retirement community. And even it's a friend still to this day, a great friend of mine. And what we were going to do is we pass out flyers around the neighborhood and start helping some of these initial people. So what we did is the pricing structure, because I think this is important to highlight. We charged $18 an hour at the time. We were just getting started, and we split it 50-50. It was just simply neighborhood kids running around. I had another main job, and this was like my side hustle in a sense. And I had my friend helping out, and I was like, you know what? Let's help these people out, split it 50-50, and that was good enough. So this leads into phase number 2 is as we get a little bit more inflow of customers, a little bit more people, not a ton, but start to find out about us, my administrative tasks go up. So it starts, phase 1 is me working in the field, a couple things coordinating with customers' times and dates when I'm coming out. But now it gets to be a little bit more. We have 3, 4, 5 people in the field, and now it goes to just a few jobs every day to we're doing multiple, and now they're starting to coordinate a little bit more. So basically just what it would look like is I do a job from say 9 to 4. We'd have it one job there, and then any administrative tasks, this would be sending invoices, collecting payments, scheduling jobs. I do that on the end. So say I got a bunch of calls during the day, they needed work done. From 4:30 to 6:30, I'd call back our customers. And then maybe 6:30 to 7, I'd send invoices from the previous day's work. So it was a little bit more process. I basically, and this is how you have to think about it, is like you do everything at the beginning, you're doing the work. And there's more things that because you get better and you take on more customers, the workload increases. And so now I have a little bit more workload. So that's the end of phase 2. Now, as you come into phase 3, it's trusting the team at their own jobs. I'm realizing there's no way I can be at all the jobs. We're getting multiple requests, and with the amount of administrative work and then also jobs that I need to be on, it was spread too thin. So what I started to do is a little bit of training for some of these new hires. Truthfully, at this point, they were still my friends. It wasn't really a management structure, but now I was starting to have to be a little bit more of a leader and then give them the trust that they could go get it done on their own. And again, still focusing on that concept of how to leverage others' time, where I would maybe pay $13, $14 an hour, be charging $25 an hour, and there would be a margin in between there. So phase 4 is promoting a GM. As much as there could have been a GM at the time, it was a startup. They had very simple tasks. But now we get to the point where we have 8, 9 people. We have to have a little bit more of a structure. It can't just be me and everybody else, a little bit more of a structure. So there's a team member that was doing a lot of the work and moved him into a GM position. And this was like the middle of 21 into 2022. And it honestly came out of necessity. So at this point in my business, I started as a commuter student to Stetson University. And then in 2022, I ended up moving on campus. So I needed a little bit of feet on the ground. I was about an hour away from where the business was located, so I needed some assistance. And it was very simple. So it was like going to meet at a customer's home, maybe checking in with the team, collecting a payment if that needed to happen. Those simple things, but they did take off my plate. And so how I handled that is that person on the team got the highest pay. And then also, and we really weren't profitable at that time, but they got a profit share. If we had a good month, a good quarter, they would get additional bonus just for being the extra resource behind the scenes, helping invest a little bit more into the company. This moves us into phase 5, which is managing 2 roles. So in 2022, we go from this operations general manager, in a sense, doing some of those light tasks, to wanting to invest a little bit more into the company. And we bring on a director of marketing. So starting to do some of our social media, managing our subscriber list, a few more things on the behind the scenes. And this is to as I'm in school at this time, I transition most of my efforts and energy into the administrative side. So before I'd come back, a lot of breaks, weekends, out in the field, working in the summertime. And now I'm realizing there's a lot more things behind the scenes to actually work on the business instead of in the business. So that was a big focus when we hired those two people. We really adjusted to starting to do three-way Zoom calls. So how can we work on getting more customers, or what problems are we experiencing in the field? What systems can we work on to actually make this better? So that was a big thing in 22 is I got a lot more high level thinking rather than just sitting in the weeds all the time. So that was a big hire. Taught me a lot about how to start to structure an organization. And then one other thing I'd mention on this is when you're first trying to hire people, to say like, I'm just going to bring on somebody full time. I have found, and I'm going to touch on that, it's usually not the most effective. These people started as they were in the field and they kind of rised up and they started to do more and they almost self-promoted themselves. So they got to a point where it's like, okay, you're doing so much, you are going above and beyond. Let's like move you up a little bit more. These team members were working most of the time in the field. So they'd split hours and then a little bit on admin. So at the time, we didn't have a ton of budget to work with. We didn't have a huge marketing spend or a lot of extra cash to pay somebody for operations. So they would get billable hours, which is, if you're in a service business, is huge. The customer is paying for part of their paycheck because it's billable hours are going to work in the field. And then the company would take care of it on the admin side, and that wouldn't be billable. So that was a big transition we made when we go from no admin to now I have overhead. How can I mitigate this? How can I have a little bit less so it's not such a high bill that I have to pay every week, every month? Is I had them working in the field, made back some of that money, and then it justified actually spending more on the administrative stuff. Okay, and that leads into phase number 6, the admin team gets too big. So we had 2 dev members. We had, I think, 2 or 3 interns. We had a director of marketing operations, and we were trying to get a customer support. And we had somebody that was also community relations that was reaching out to businesses. We had up to almost, I want to say this is correct, but 8 admin members, and we had 14 team members total. 8 admin, 14 total. So basically 6 people that were just in the field. And out of these admin members, granted, some of them were in the field as well, but it's like we got so trigger happy. It honestly at that point just kind of turned into a party, a hangout, like an after school club. Like we were having fun with it. We were like, okay, look at all these projects. Let's try and work and develop and make this better. We brought way too many people in behind the scenes and realized like we're not getting anything done. Like it wasn't productive. We were experimenting. I think maybe looking back, there's probably a lesson there is like just the experimenting to learn, but you have to iterate. If it's not working, you got to pivot quickly. I don't think I did that soon enough. So that was an interesting learning. And we went from like that 7 to 8 and then realized we have to like completely shift back the other way. So what we did is we ended up trimming a lot of that staff. And that's where phase 7 comes in, is trimming staff and increasing the responsibilities for each member. What we did when we trimmed some of that staff is we did still want to have a customer support role. So I mentioned before we had operations, we had marketing, and that next hire was going to be customer support. They're answering phone calls, inquiries from any people that are interested in work. And so we had a couple part-time people come in. This was actually a great lesson I learned in how to train. Like when you bring somebody on, the process you want to go through when you're training. We basically brought these people in, and I wasn't clear on what my expectations even were. So for them, it was just it was unfair from the beginning. If the leader can't set out the expectations, how can a team member ever hit that? And so we brought these people in. They were good, but not like we had to be there so much with them to help them get up to speed. And this is how you answer the call. This is how you text back. This is how the etiquette for an email. And it got to the point where we would go 2 months down the road and we're still sitting on Zoom calls, like monitoring them, like on the Zoom call with them while they're answering the phone call. And we're just kind of sitting there waiting to give feedback. So it's like, we're a month and a half, close to 2 months into the process, and we're still hand-holding because we couldn't set clear expectations. They weren't getting it. And it just, all in all, was not a good experience. So we ended up having to trim back a little bit. And what that did is our core team, they had to be a lot more cross roles. And that was a great learning in that phase 7, is you have to be ultra clear on what the responsibility is for each person. And so what happened, for example, our operations manager and myself were both answering phone calls. Like we had shared responsibilities. Like you would do it for a little bit and then I'd come in and do it. And then I would do it tomorrow. And then you got it. Hey, do you got it from 9 to 1 tomorrow? Okay, great. I think I can get it in the afternoon tomorrow. And it was just this back and forth when I just realized like there has to be one specific role. This is your responsibility. Two people cannot have the same accountability. Otherwise it doesn't get done. So it was a huge lesson I learned is like when we trimmed staff, that means everybody had to increase workload because we still had things to do. And now at that point, when we're all over the place, we're not being ultra clear in who has what. So things were falling through the cracks. And that was a big lesson from number 7 there. Helped us get more clear on what the actual departments should look like. Moving into phase 8, failing at hiring a customer support. So imagine this, we have 8 team members, they're all doing some of them like 5 hours a week, some of them 3, another one 10, and we trim back, we kind of reset. We have the foundation, we have a director of marketing, we have an operations, and we really are missing that component of customer support. We're all having to go around this. When things get busy, we'll have to jump into that role and do that. We knew we wanted this role. And so when we trim the staff, we're like, okay, we're going to hire back for that customer support. We ended up spending a month and a half of time leading up into 2024, prepping to get somebody onboarded. The problem with that is when we were getting this person onboarded, there was no demand. We did it during a down part of our year when we're slower. And so at the same time that we increased our costs, our demand goes significantly down. And now this person's basically sitting, we're paying them a full-time salary. And so I just recorded an episode recently with Michael. He was episode 23. And one of the things he said is, you want to do something, take action, maybe get that building, hire that employee. When things get to the point that the capacity is about to break. And our capacity wasn't about to break. It was more like I have a few hours during the week that I am inconvenienced to answer these calls because I'm working on other projects. So I'm going to have somebody full time. It doesn't make sense when I look back at it now, but coming full time to come take care of this. And that's where we were at. And I look back and there was a lot of good takeaway there. I learned how to actually onboard properly, what expectations to set from the get-go, how to set clear performance metrics. But on that phase 8, the lesson there is if you don't absolutely need it, don't just do it to do it. Like there has to be a clear intention. So that was something I took away, which leads into phase number 9 is one more try with CS. So we tried at the beginning of the year, and when things were down, it didn't work out. And then we kind of are still all in this jumbled phase. Like we're all still trying to do each other's roles. It's the departments aren't clear because we're missing this key function. So we knew customer support was one of them. We had a marketing, which is going to handle all the newsletters, social media, anything website related, all the branding. You have operations managing the team, onboarding, interviewing, getting team shirts, making sure customers are happy. And then CS, which is any inbound calls, almost like a sales, but also support for customers. When they call, they have to have somebody to reach out to. That was the key function we were missing. So in 2024, we tried this one more time, and the biggest pressure it took off was our operations manager because he was doing a little bit of both. He was going back and forth. And when we do multiple things, we don't really do any one thing very well. So ultimately, this helped us get way clearer on the functions of the business. When something went wrong, who's responsible for it? So if it was branding, it falls under marketing. Say we're not getting new customers, that's in the marketing. If a customer is not satisfied with the work that's being done, or a team has an issue, that goes into operations. When a customer is unhappy with a scheduling process, or confused, or wants to actually book a job and can't, whatever that may be, goes into customer support. So they all have a clear function, who's responsible when things go wrong and who's responsible to make sure they do go right every time. That was the biggest lesson from that phase 9 is like just getting clear. And also too, it helped my role get clear. Once I knew I had these departments, a lot of the day-to-day started to function very effectively. Now I'm able to focus more on the development of the business, getting clear my role, working on leadership for the team, developing out the team, and then also the growth strategies ahead. And now for phase 10, 2 layers of management. And now coming into 2025, this is one of the biggest lessons that I'm taking away is in our company, we have a director of marketing, and we recently took on a VA from the Philippines. And the VA is here to support the marketing department. We want to make a little bit more aggressive moves coming into 25. We have a lot of exciting initiatives at our company. And because of that, because there's 2 layers now, I'm much more removed from what is happening in the day-to-day. I don't know everything. And I intentionally try to have a little bit of a hand everywhere I go, but the more our company grows, it's just natural that I'm going to know less about what's occurring. And so how I've tried to solve this is I had a recent conversation with one of my mentors, and he said, when you have a bigger team, you have to manage different. And there's a concept called managing by objectives. And it's a principle by Peter Drucker. And it's setting out a goal, but allowing the team and empowering the team to figure out the means to get there. And so I don't know everything that's happening in our marketing department. I don't know all of the conversations that are occurring, all of the little projects that are happening, but I set the goal of here's the new customers that we need to get. Here is the launch date for our new launch into the Daytona Beach area. Here are some of the other projects that are important that need to get done in the marketing department, but I need you to figure out how to actually get there. So that's been a huge change and adjustment. I think a lot of it is just faith in a solid core team. And so one of the changes, and it's kind of cool to observe when I look back, when our director of marketing first started, it was me creating the post and they would help with just a couple of things. And then you progress a little bit further and it was like, okay, they create the post. Then I say, okay, I'm going to come and help you edit. And then they create the post and I give the thumbs up. And then now we set a content calendar. I know what's going to happen on a monthly basis. I give the thumbs up. They start posting, confirm with me when the post is up. And we've gotten to the point because there's more trust and the skill set has gotten better. Now, in a lot of cases, they know what I'm looking for. They know what the vision is for the company. They don't need to approve every single post. So it's like allowing your team and empowering them to get better. And as you grow as an organization, you're going to have to step back and then trust some of it, having the objective, hey, this is our goal. I need to figure out how to get there. I'm going to trust you with your decisions. If you need help, I'm here. I'm a resource, but just trusting in your team. And the more you give your trust to your team, I think they're going to be much more bought in and feel empowered to actually make a difference and try their best when they're working because they feel they're supported and they have the flexibility and autonomy to do so. So as a final takeaway, I walked you through the beginning and how some of the things have changed through my journey. I went from working full-time in the field to stepping out more into administrative, to hiring more people, to getting out of the day-to-day. So a lot of things have adjusted. And I think one of the biggest things to reflect on when I look at delegation, like I said at the beginning, I do not have this thing figured out. I'm learning as I'm going. I'm sharing just kind of raw thoughts as to how I'm thinking about it. When I've been thinking about delegating something and it's like, okay, can I keep doing it or should I spend money and invest in something else? That's kind of you have to almost put faith in that decision because you could keep doing it. You could technically make more at the short term because you're not paying somebody to do it. You're doing it yourself. So you don't have to pay a lot of times as business owners, we don't think of like, okay, I should be making this salary. It's just kind of like, I got to do what I got to do to make sure we get enough money into the business. So you could do it. But I think there's a point where it's like you want to delegate and you have to pay a little bit more money to get someone in there to help. And I think a couple ways I've thought about it is like when I need to delegate is I ask a couple of questions. Is this a repetitive task first? Is this something that happens on a frequent basis? The second would be if I'm giving this to someone else, is it directly impacting the most important parts of the business? And if it's not, then it's not something that the founder CEO should be spending their time on. And I think third is just, can somebody do it maybe 80% as good as you? And if they can do it 80% as good, hand it off, make that trade all day long because you get your time back. And that is one of the most precious resources we have. So I'm going to conclude with this. There is a value in finding a good team, a good leadership team, people that are bought in. When you can build the team, you start to step out, you get your time back. All of these things happened as good people came into the organization. There's mistakes, of course, that we made, but you have to make those mistakes to bring in the people that are going to change the course of the organization. So with all that said, I wish you the best of luck and let's keep crushing it.